Are you struggling with maintaining a positive outlook in life? And how do you move forward after the death of a loved one, cancer, and trauma? Today's guest, Christy Hibbert, and I sit down for a very vulnerable, real, and heartfelt conversation around the multiple stories of trauma while learning how not only to survive, but also the very sacred messages of rest, of grace, and purpose. By the end of this podcast, you may not only shed a tear or two, but gain inspiration and insight on what it really looks like to not give up when life not only gets hard, but seemingly hopeless. Dr. Christina Hibbert is the #1 best-selling author of the award-winning memoir, This Is How We Grow. She's also written other books, 8 Keys to Mental Health Through Exercise, Who I Am Without You, and the forthcoming Mastery of Motherhood. She is a clinical psychologist, a speaker, a social media influencer, and a thought leader. She is the founder of the Arizona Postpartum Wellness Coalition, producer of the internationally sold DVD Postpartum Couples, and was named the most inspirational women's health professional in 2018 and 2019. Dr. Christy Hibbert is also the host of Motherhood 2.0 podcast, creator of Grow group coaching program, and Mastery of Motherhood Mom. She's overcome triple negative breast cancer and the BRCA1 genetic mutation through chemotherapy, cold capping, 15 surgeries, and now walking through chronic autoimmune illness. Amongst all this, she's a wife of 29 years, a mother of 6 from ages 28 to 16, a grandmother, and so much more. Now take a deep breath. That says a lot. And as you can see, you're going to learn a lot from today's very heartfelt, real, authentic, and genuine conversation. Let's listen. Dr. Christina Hibbert, it is such a privilege to actually have this time. We've talked about it just in passing for so long, of having the opportunity to sit down and share our hearts, not doing Pilates, but actually just having a heartfelt conversation. And I think it had to take us making it work-driven.
Yes.
As 2 professional driven women. But as I prepared to kind of focus in on some of the things that you bring to the table, because there's so many. It's a feast really to sit at the table and talk to you, because you have so much wisdom, you have so much experience. I wanted to start with a book. About a year ago, you're actually today nearly 100 Pilates sessions in. So
Yay me.
that is true. That is true.
Yeah.
But nearly a year ago, I remember our first session. I literally remember you walking in the door and you're like, I just had to get here. And you said, I just scheduled the session. I just knew I had to just do it. And then I didn't even connect how we knew each other from the past. I didn't even till later. But I remember just sitting in awe because I was hearing your story and I was just, wow. And you sharing how many surgeries you've had and the cancer, which we'll kind of walk through here a little bit as we dive deeper. But I remember just thinking, what a woman. And then you gave me this book, This Is How We Grow. And the book is your memoir of, part of your life. And, it was written some years ago, but I'm really giving a snapshot of what you walk through. And when I started reading the book, I remember thinking, oh, she feels the way I do. Oh, she feels, and how can you share with our listeners the reason why you wrote this book?
I felt compelled. In fact, as you know, it's the story of loss and grief and motherhood and going from 3 to 6 kids overnight when my sister and brother-in-law both died. And it is at times heartbreaking and hard to read probably sometimes because it can be very intense, but also I wanted it to be that way. I wanted it to be like someone was literally walking through my life with me through day by day, because that is how we grow. That is how we get through things. That is how we overcome and become and flourish, as I like to say. Yeah. And I purposefully wrote it that way so that it would feel like you were in the day-to-day with me, because I do believe that that's what connects us, and that's what makes you say, oh, she's like me. Okay, I relate. Oh, someone gets me. Oh, I'm not alone. And that's always my goal, is to help others know that they're not alone, that whatever they're going through, they can get through it, and to kind of help them see how to do that a little bit.
Yes, that was exactly the way I felt. The heart of your book, This Is How We Grow. I thought, I started my Pilates studios, Roots, Mind, Body, Health, and Fitness, because it's that idea. And I'm curious around the idea of how when women walk through trauma, that when we walk back, we look and we see so much is the idea of under the surface, the roots, the change that we undergo to grow, and the transformation. Your tagline, when life throws you mud, plant yourself and grow. But when I opened the book, you wrote, may you always choose to grow. And that really resonated with me, just personally, heart to heart, woman to woman. And I think about women that are listening today and, going through the trenches, going through death, loss, depression, autoimmune disease, cancer. Like, you've kind of nailed them all.
Yeah, didn't set out to do that, of course, but yes.
But that we come and we want to encourage, like you said, you wrote this book really to encourage and to empower women. But what do you say to yourself?
I would have to say, I feel like even from the time that I wrote This Is How We Grow, and that I was going through all of that, which obviously I grew a lot through that. I changed a lot. I learned a lot through that. But cancer's been like a whole other level of learning, and chronic illness now coming out of cancer. So just like briefly for those who are watching or listening, when I was diagnosed with cancer, it was stage 1, and it was triple negative. So it's the most aggressive type. And I also have a strong family history. My mom's been diagnosed 3 times. And I also carry the BRCA1 genetic mutation. And so because of all that, we just said, I need a double mastectomy. And a week after I was diagnosed, to the day, I was having a double mastectomy already. So it was really fast. It was like I was having a mammogram on a Monday. I had the biopsy on a Tuesday. I was diagnosed on the Wednesday. I met with a surgeon on a Friday. And the next Wednesday, I was having a double mastectomy. And I thought, because of that it would just be, okay, it's going to be a long recovery, but I probably won't have to do chemo, 3 to 6 months. I'll be done. Well, that's not what happened at all. Clearly, everything kind of that could go wrong went wrong, and a lot of complications that ended up in 15 total surgeries, and now chronic illness. So to me, it's felt like it kind of never really ended, in a sense. So the things that I used to tell myself before, I would tell myself, like, okay, I need to push myself. I need to get up. When I'm struggling with depression, when I'm struggling with postpartum depression, when I've struggled with anxiety, when I've struggled with grief, I need to go for a walk. I need to get out and be with people. I need to, do the things that I love, like traveling or even taking a hot bath. And now those are all things that are difficult for my body. And so it's been a big shift for me to now have to say, okay, a lot of the coping strategies I used to use aren't necessarily going to work for my body every day. And so I need to I check in with myself every single day and see, where am I? And then really give myself that grace and practice that self-care, which I thought I was doing before cancer, but this is just like a whole other level where I literally have to hold myself back. You talked about us being driven. I am. I love to I'm a go-getter. I want to get out there and do and, achieve and, serve and all of these wonderful things. But it's been really hard not to be able to do that. And so, I have to find new ways to let myself do those things, to find my purpose again. I love that I've learned this now because I can speak to so many other different kinds of people than the people that I was speaking to maybe, and this is how we grow. Because now I know not everybody can heal in the ways that I did in that time of my life,
That's so wise. I was talking to somebody today and she was moving and she was kind of rushing through a therapeutic movement. And I said, you can't rush your healing.
Oh, yeah.
And she said, that's right. Like healing isn't fast. No, healing doesn't have a timeline. But I do have to say, you have transformed in this grace space, as you said. And what I would say that I've seen is that you show up for one. You're very diligent. So that driven part of you shows up. But in a class where it might be hard, and I've seen it twice now that I can recall, but when things got hard and you're going into some of your symptoms of your autoimmune and the Ehlers-Danlos and some of those things and POTS, you're like, where you would have pushed through before, you give yourself permission to stop.
Yes.
And as humbling that is, it's so honoring. And I always encourage that. And I try to create this nurturing environment where we're not competitive and vain in this Pilates, kind of world. But I know that's such a hard spot for you to come to, that when you are driven, and to our listeners that, the reality of life sometimes it hits so hard that like the things that you used to be able to do, you can't do, and that it's not failure. It's actually success when you listen to your body and you say, I have to stop.
I can look back even a year ago and see just how much I've grown and how much I've also been able to push myself in gentle ways so that I have been able to kind of do a little bit more here and there. But there have been a lot of times like that. My husband and I just went on a vacation, and it looked totally different than we went to Vancouver, Canada, and we went there literally the week before I was diagnosed with cancer. And this time it had to look very different. Whereas before it was go, go, go and hiking and, all these activities and being up. I mean, I have a hard time traveling. I have a hard time sitting upright for a while. Exercise is tough for me. Heat is very bad for me. It all triggers POTS, mast cell activation syndrome, and then the Ehlers-Danlos syndrome as well as in there. So it had to look like planning rest days before and when we got there, and not going and doing all of the things that I wanted to do, and trying for the hike, but making sure it was a shorter hike. And then when I got potsy, which I did, it was like, okay, we need to turn around and we need to go back, but at least I could do what I could do, And it's been really tough. It's been really tough for me. And I know that other people that struggle with chronic illness will understand this, or even cancer or anything like that, or mental illness too. It's trying to know your limits, kind of, like what is okay and what's not okay. What can I do? What can't I do? And my motto kind of on this vacation was, I am highly capable. And I think for a while there, I questioned that. I thought, I honestly, it broke down my self-worth. And this whole thing is about self-worth too. But man, cancer and chronic illness just totally stripped me of my self-worth too. And I really have struggled with that and thought, what even is the point? Why am I even here, God? If I can't serve in the way that I used to, or if I can't do the things that I always thought I was supposed to do, fulfill my dreams or goals or callings in life, why am I even here? Sometimes at my worst moments, I felt that way. But it's like, on this trip, I was able to say, okay, I am highly capable, so I can do a lot of these things, but I'm not always able to do them. And I've really learned about like ableism and sort of, like I actually, for the first time ever, and this is huge for me, I got a wheelchair at the airport in Phoenix because I knew it was going to be 115 and I knew that I would be potsy because whenever it's hot, that's how I am. And I was so sick, and it just helped me get to the gate instead of being like, I can do this, I can do this. So it really has been a difference, a huge difference for me in having to, like I said, hold myself back, kind of pace myself, have moderation, slow down.
One of the things that I heard that I want to touch on is the books that I shared with you a few months ago. And it was Try Softer
Yes.
and Strong Like Water by Annie Kubler. And those books were transformational for me because you, like I, are very not only driven, we have big dreams, we have big goals, and we both really feel like God put us on this planet for this calling. Like there's such a desire, a yearning, and we're like, God, like, why are we being held back? Like we're like thoroughbreds, we're ready to, win this race. And then like the reality of life hits us. I struggle with autoimmune disease and walk through so many different parallel stories, and not the same, but the feelings of when you come through that, we do become tired. And the reality of so many of your words that you said through your book, I loved how you wrote the book, like the chapters and seasons. And then the subsets were the emotions that came from the experiences of those seasons. But what I really saw in that are a lot of those keywords like overwhelm, fatigue, burnout, like you want to give up, like going from 3 kids to 6 kids overnight, like that's huge. But what I heard you say, coming back to that last just nugget of so many nuggets, was that ability to rest and try softer, simple, like not always having to work hard, like
Yes.
work not just smart, but work like just sweet, like soft. And I know that I anticipate that there's so many women that are listening in their 40s, in their 50s, that probably are sitting in a very similar chair as we are in navigating seasons of their life.
Yes.
Can you share with me, not just maybe this book, because I know you're writing another book, but in this season of your life that you feel really gave you formation, that looking back, you're like, that really formed me to be able to handle cancer, to handle autoimmune disease, to handle letting go of my children when they're leaving?
That's such a good question because there have been many. I would have to say this time, during the time that I lost my sister. So I'd lost my younger sister to cancer when I was 18 and she was 8. And I'd been through grief, and I'd been through postpartum depression, and I went back to school to get my doctorate degree when my husband went to dental school, and we had 2 little kids, and then I was pregnant my last year, and we had our 3rd child, and it was a big decision for us to go to even try for a 4th. And as you know, when my sister died, she died of an overdose of Tylenol and alcohol, which was later ruled a suicide. And her husband had died 2 months prior of cancer, melanoma. And then I was pregnant with this baby that we thought would be our 4th, but ended up being our 6th. So when she died, the first thing I said to my husband was, do you realize we just inherited 2 kids? And we had 5 kids for a couple weeks, and then I gave birth and we had 6 kids. And I really thought I didn't think I was cut out to be a mom of that many kids, and I'm an oldest of 6 children as well. And I used to tell my mom, I'm never having 6 children. That's way too many, because she'd make me babysit all the time. And and of course, that is not at all what I thought was in store for me. I thought I was about to have my 4th child, and my career was about to take off. I was just barely licensed for a year, and this all happened. And so I had to quit working as a psychologist, and I was home with the kids full time, trying to just not only build this family and help them grieve through everything that they were going through, but heal myself so that I could be there for them, so that I could I don't know, even move forward in my life, And that was just so challenging to show up for them. But I'd also seen what had happened when my little sister had died, and my mom was so overcome by grief, and my dad kind of tuned out because of his grief. And they just kind of weren't able to be there for us, and we never talked about it. And it wasn't something that our family still is something that our family still struggles with. When my little sister died, it changed everything. And I knew that I had to be there for my kids. I just knew that I had to. And I know that probably you read this in the book, but I had even seen this Mother of the Year on TV one time, and I was like, oh my gosh, I could never be a mom like that. I know.
And you are.
I know. It's so crazy to me, but I literally was like, she has 7 kids. She looks all perfect, and she's serving and doing all these great things. And I was like, I will never be that way, because I want to be, I have too many dreams and goals. How could I have this family and that? And yet there I was, years later, I was on this stage teaching about motherhood. I had been named Arizona's Mother of the Year the year before, which was so crazy to me. I didn't know it was an actual thing, but it is. And I was teaching about motherhood, and I kind of had this moment with the audience where I said, I wouldn't be up here talking about this if my sister wouldn't have died. I've kind of become a voice for other women with breast cancer and mental and emotional health, which is not addressed at all, and with chronic illness and mental and emotional health. And that's what the book that I literally submitted to the agent today, my proposal for Reluctant Warrior, for a book about breast cancer, a breast cancer emotional survival guide, which will help millions of women, because there's nothing out there like that. And now that feels like a purpose for me. I definitely can see that so many different women, especially because I work with women, can relate to me because of all the many, many things that I've been through in my life.
Yeah. And the greatest teacher is the student.
Of course.
And so what I hear you say in that is that sometimes life doesn't turn out how we planned.
Oh my gosh, no. Don't make plans, right?
Yeah. But the purposes of God prevail.
Mm-hmm.
And in the design of your life, God knew when he formed you and knitted you together in your mother's womb, because you are faithful. Mm. And I love the name of your book, Reluctant Warrior, because it's the real, it's the genuine, it's the authentic spot of us. I'm tired, God, but I'll show up ready to win.
Yeah.
And I love that. I see that in your life. I see that in your story. Speaking to grief, mm-hmm. in your book, you talk about how grief, a lot of counselors mm-hmm. say grief is so individual and to walk through it alone. And what I heard you say in that is that grief in your family, when you were a girl and you lost your younger sister, mm-hmm. and how, you watched your parents handle that grief. Mm-hmm. But then years later, when you lost your other sister, and how you maybe grieve differently, how they grieve differently. Yeah. And in your book, you talk about grief isn't an individual process. It really is a family affair, and families that stay together through grief won't be torn apart, ideally, hopefully. I mean, we go through the rips and the tears, the friction. Can you speak to our listeners that maybe are navigating grief right now, mm-hmm. navigating depression, death, loss, disappointment, when you think I was going for my career and then all of a sudden this hit? How can you encourage our listeners, for one, how to handle grief if they don't have family or somebody in their corner?
This is so important. In fact, the very first chapter of my new book is breast cancer isn't an individual diagnosis. It's a family. And I feel that way about everything. And I've taught a lot. I've done continuing education and taught a lot of courses on grief in the family, because, yeah, most of the world thinks, well, first of all, we're not good at tackling grief anyway. Our natural tendency is most of us do feel like we want to isolate when we don't feel well. When we're depressed, when we're grief-stricken, when we're struggling with mental illness or physical illness, we kind of want to shut the world away from us. But as I say, families that feel together can heal together.
So good.
And whatever we feel, I think we judge ourselves a lot, especially as women and mothers too, especially if we don't feel the positive emotions, or if we're not acting positive or whatever, this whole toxic positivity thing. But that's not real, first of all. Second of all, emotions are not bad. They just are. And we can experience them in healthy ways, no matter what kind of emotion it is. And third, if we don't let ourselves feel it, it's just kind of always there, trying to break down the door, right? So one of the biggest questions I get, because I've specialized in grief and loss my whole 25 years of my career as a psychologist, is how do I grieve? And my first answer is you just do. You let yourself feel the feelings. You let yourself go through the process. There's no time frame. There's no right or wrong. There's over 100 symptoms of grief. But also we need to bridge instead of isolating, try to reach out to those people that can be there for us. And that isn't always easy.
Yeah. Every time you open your mouth, you have wisdom on your tongue. The woman of the year, mother of the year. No, I just,
Not woman,
no. Yes, why not? Hey, walk in it. There is so many nuggets. I love the toxic positivity. I did do a blog on that as well. And I think it's so important in our society because we feel so pressured to have it all together, especially in our social media. And we see that. And then it's like, but I don't. And then you feel like, I'll just put it all together and just say a whole bunch of mantras or affirmations and then I'll be happy. And those are all good. They're all resources. They're all tools. But the reality of it, sometimes you just have to sit with it. I think about how much of our life, when we look back, really did form us. I want to speak to motherhood and how motherhood helped you navigate even right now with cancer and autoimmune and being willing to, adapt.
It's been really interesting going through this breast cancer and chronic illness journey. And first of all, seeing how that impacted my children and then having to now repair those relationships, which I've had to do with some of them. And also having those open dialogues with them about what it was like. Because, especially in our family, my worst fear literally was that I would die. Not because I'm scared of death. I'm actually not scared of death for me. But because they'd already lost a mother and an aunt and a father and an uncle that were like a mom and an aunt. And then my two friends that died were second moms to my kids. So they had lost 3 mother figures. And then I was diagnosed with cancer. So it was I knew that it was so hard on them. And a couple of the kids kind of distanced themselves and wouldn't come around. And my daughter Kennedy at the time was 16 and she was struggling with depression and suicidality. And while I was going through chemotherapy, which yes, I ended up having to do. And it was the first time in my life where I literally couldn't do what I wanted to do or needed to do as a mom. And like my daughter was mad at me as a 16-year-old saying, you're not there for me like you were. And I'm like, yeah, you're right. I'm not, because I'm so sick that I can't, I can barely formulate a thought in a day. So I can't help you with this, but I can get you resources and try to support you. And now as a 22-year-old, she can look back and say, oh, I see what you were doing. But at the time, it just felt like you were gone. So it's crazy because these past 6 years have really transformed my whole identity as a mom, I guess. And also that clinging to that role of being a mom where I felt like I was doing a good job as a mom. And then suddenly I was thrust into this place where I couldn't do what I used to do. So I've had to even do motherhood in a different way. And I've had to learn how to say no to my children or ask them for help. I've actually, with my 15th surgery, finally on the 15th one, and my kids were older because this was about 4 years after my initial diagnosis. I actually reached out to them and said, I need you to support me through this because it's going to be hard for me. And it's another several months of recovery. And I need you to ask how I'm doing. I need you to care about like what's going on with me. But I do know that I can still be a great mother, and it can look different.
I think what I hear in this that our listeners can really gain from is that the freedom that motherhood looks different for a lot of different women.
Yes.
And we start motherhood with an idea of the perfect mom. And I know that for me personally, when I had, at that time, I had 4 kids within 2 years, but by the time I had 5th, I had autoimmune disease and I had it for 2 years. And I had days where I didn't want to wake up and all those things. And now when I look back in there, I hear my kids, they're like, that part of our life taught us so much. Mm-hmm. It taught us so much of the gift of life. They didn't see me always at my best. They saw me rise at times and they saw me fall at times. And I think that is like one of the greatest things we can give our children. And now my kids tell me like, you were the best mom. I had one of my kids tell me the other day, he was like, I just want to figure out how you did it. I want to do it exactly like you did it. Oh. And I looked at him and I was like, you want to, like, are you kidding? Like we lost everything. We had to short sell our house. We were bankrupt. We lost everything. And he's like, I know. I want to give my kids the same life you guys gave us. Oh. And I thought to myself, like, are you kidding me? Mm. Like, I feel like such a failure at times. But what they remember is actually how we continue to show up. And I love that when coming back to Sydney and she wants to be a psychologist and, you have dentists and you have doctors in your families, like, they're all going to turn out.
Yes,
it all is what it is. It is all,
and for them too. The same lesson for me, the things that made me give me my purpose, like for them too. One thing that I just have to share is my daughter Kennedy, who was struggling so much at that time, who's now 22, and she's in Los Angeles, becoming a voice actor of all things, and she started a podcast, and it's interviewing other fellow voice actors. And it's called The Vulnerable for VO, for voiceover, and it's spelled VO, vulnerable. And it's all about the importance of vulnerability. And she's talking, it's a mental health podcast. And she's right now setting up for October for breast cancer awareness, getting this really important guest to come, but also she's having me come to talk about breast cancer and the family and what I'm doing to try to, meet the needs for people. And it's like, wow, we've had that conversation of, her saying, I would never want to go through that again. But at the same time, I would not be doing this. And that she feels like that's her purpose, to help young people who are into video games and, voice acting and, anime or whatever, like she was, to help them know that they're not alone and that they can, find help and to help them get that help. I mean, that's the best feeling as a parent, isn't it? When you see your kids giving back and finding their purpose in life too.
Yeah. The best life lessons are not taught, they're caught. The hard part is part of the design too. Mm-hmm. Because in the hard, we really lean into hope.
Absolutely.
I love your chapter on hope. And I think that in our society right now, there is an epidemic of hopelessness. And there's so much overwhelm because there's so much information. What does hope look like for you when you were navigating so many things that you've talked upon, but the gift of hope that I know that we have in faith in God, but for somebody that's searching for hope, what would you say?
Hope has been so much at the forefront of my mind these past 6 years. It's such a word that's associated with, especially breast cancer. You see the pink ribbon and the hope, and usually the O is a pink ribbon and all of that. And I will admit that, even though I knew that I believed that I would live and I would survive and all of that. So I never really thought I was going to die yet. But I had moments where it was like, what am I hoping for? What kind of life am I even going to be able to live because of all of the damage done to my body? And still, even with all the illnesses and stuff, I have so many days where I'm just like, again, like, I don't even know what I'm supposed to be doing with myself or with my life. But to me, it's that light in the darkness. You have to be in the darkness, really, to really, really need that hope and to really, really learn hope, I feel like. And it's not a terrible thing to be in the darkness. The darkness comes once a day, every day. And it's a necessary part of life. And I keep thinking of, this image that I've had these past years going through this like health journey have been of me standing on the edge of this, like almost coming out of a tunnel that's all dark, and I'm on the edge of a cliff, and I'm feeling that God's asking me to just step out. And I'm like, there's nothing there. I'm not, how am I supposed to do that? But I do, I just take the step and I close my eyes and I just trust, and somehow there really is something there. I just couldn't see it. There's a safe footing there. To me, that's hope. It's like, okay, it's that kind of belief that, all right, I'm going to take this really painful, hard step. I'm so exhausted. I don't want to have to be resilient anymore. I actually made a term I call it resilience fatigue. I have resilience fatigue. A lot of women out there, a lot of people have resilience fatigue. You're exhausted just from trying to survive. You're in survival mode. But it is that act of being in that survival mode and needing that resilience that you're choosing to not only grow, but like take that step forward. And that is hope every time you're taking that step. And yeah, I did say that in the book. I said it's one step forward, knee deep in the mud. That's how it felt. That's how it still feels. So slow. It's so hard. It's so painful. Mm-hmm. And that's hope to me.
That nails it. That nails it so well. And I think that I never thought about that. I love that we brought that around with the breast cancer, because I totally forgot that. But then I'm like, yeah, hope. Yeah. You spoke about getting your pitch off to your publisher today. Mm-hmm. So I'm anticipating this is kind of what you're going into is your next book.
Yep.
The Reluctant Warrior.
Yep.
Can you explain a little bit about that? And then is there anything else that you're working on? Because I know you're always up to something.
I'm trying to do what I can with moderation and pacing, of course. But yeah, I am working actively on this book, Reluctant Warrior, and I am actually trying to take this and to make it kind of a movement, because as I mentioned earlier, there really is such a gap in emotional and mental, social and spiritual support for cancer patients and their families. And it's kind of like, you have all these people there for you physically, and then they say you're done, but you're not really done. And you're kind of left on your own, and nobody's there to help you through survivorship. And so I feel like part of my purpose now is to use my personal and professional, and to not only write this book for survivors, but for their families, and also for professionals that are working with cancer survivors. And then I'm planning to develop it into continuing education for providers, for medical and mental health providers, to hopefully make a huge difference and change in the world for how we support people through cancer with mental and emotional health, and how we support their families. And I'm also hoping to do a TED Talk on this very topic. So that's one of my next big goals. But obviously, one of my goals is always just to try to get my health going and try to, kind of keep improving a little bit at a time. This is how we grow. The whole idea of it is kind of, we grow by taking one step and then another and then another. So that's kind of where I am. I'm not going to try to overshoot it.
Where can people find out more information about you?
Of course, you can find me all over social media, Dr. Christina Hibbert. And really, even my Reluctant Warrior, it is a memoir that's also going to be teaching. So it is sharing my story. And if you find me online, if you find me on social media, you'll see that I mean, really, I'm just there to share the raw and the real and what I'm going through. It's absolutely the opposite of most social media. It's not at all perfect. It's very messy and it's showing kind of what it's really like. And I feel like that's how we connect. So hopefully hopefully I can connect with some of your listeners online if they need the support that I can offer. And yeah.
Absolutely. You are just a shining light, as you've said, and just a great resource personally and professionally. And I know your impact is going to be profound. And as you said, hoping to change millions of people's lives and so many people struggling right now. So I'm so excited to see you just shine like you are and impact. And I know I'm excited to see you just continue to flourish and bloom wherever you're planted.
Thank you.
Wow. Again, I'm sitting in the seat of just honor to listen to Christy Hibbert's heartfelt conversations today. And now you can probably see why she is the woman that she is. Her words truly painted a tapestry of a life, maybe not a perfect one, but one woven with threads of faith, of resilience, and unwavering purpose. We talked about how hard it feels when life feels hopeless, and also how to embrace those secret messages hidden deep in our hardest struggles. I believe and truly hope that her story gave you permission to sit and feel, as she said, in your own pain, while also inspiring you to move forward, believing in God's great purpose for your life and that it will always prevail. Now, to continue with your own healing journey and growth, be sure to connect with Christy and valuable resources that she provides, including her books, her podcast, and her support systems that you could reference in our show notes. Once again, thank you so much for tuning in to the Kelsey Mercer podcast. Please remember to share this very powerful episode with someone that you know needs to hear it today.